I didn't even see you there. What's going on, you guys? It's your huggable, chill hipster here. Welcome back to another video. If I just started off every single video like that, what's going on, you guys? It's your huggable hipster here. Like, that would just be so cringe. Oh my god. But we're not here to call out content creators. We are here to discuss remakes in the gaming industry and why they are so important and vital to the ecosystem of the gaming industry. Now, some people are going to say, Ariel, there are just some games that need to be left alone. They shouldn't be touched. If they're touched, then they're going to be damaged to a certain extent because whatever the image or whatever the message is that it was originally intended for might be somewhat tainted if it's remade. And I'm here to tell you there is no tainting in an image, there's no tainting in a perspective, there's no tainting in a game that is meant to be an art piece. An art piece is always going to be up for interpretation by whether it's the developers or the players. We're going to go into a few points, but I feel like the overarching reason why we need to think that remakes are a positive thing is because it allows a newer generation and a newer audience to appreciate said game. So let's take Silent Hill 2, for example, because I feel like this is going to be a perfect moment to discuss how wonderful it is that there is a remake happening. I'm kind of biased because I absolutely love the Silent Hill series. Silent Hill Downpour, not so much. I appreciate what was being done with it, but it's my least favorite in the series. Like, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it. Yes, I think some themes were good in the game, but overall it was kind of... So when it comes to remakes, and in the case of Silent Hill 2, I feel like this is a perfect example of bringing a new audience into the player base, of bringing a new audience in to see what exactly Silent Hill is. Now, there does come some dangers with having a remake. As we saw with the Resident Evil 3 remake, it completely botched the entire thing. And you know, it's strange. Redo my review on that game because in retrospect, and as the years go on, and as I think of it more and more, I'm so disappointed at how that review went. Yes, it was cool to see a new take on how Jill Valentine looked and to be able to see Resident Evil 3 in a shiny new coat of paint. That was really, really cool. But taking away the puzzles, not even putting multiple endings and not even having Barry at the end of the game, that was disappointing for me. It's like you are giving new players an entirely different image than what the actual game represented back in, like, I think it was the early 2000s. 1999. I feel old. So the game which came out in 1999 originally was the first version of it, and then we had the remake that came out in 2020. So when that remake came out, everyone was like, oh my god, it's just going to be as good as Resident Evil 2 remake, which the remake for number 2 was outstanding. It was so good. But I feel like the best remake of all the Resident Evil remakes is Resident Evil 1 remake that came out in 2002. Sorry, recent fans to the Resident Evil series, but that remake just hits differently. Also, that was the very first game I ever played in my own personal history of ever, so it was a great game to start off with because I was like, oh, zombies, what are those? And my dad's like, oh, it's things that want to hug you. He didn't know how to explain what zombies were to me when I was a kid, so he just said, they're things that want to hug you. Except their hugs are very deadly. Going into the conversation of more so Silent Hill 2 now, having this remake come out, I feel like it's going to be coming out this year, even though I don't think there is a set date for it. It's going to be tricky to see how the audience responds because you have the audience that is in line with how I think of where, oh, this remake is going to be absolutely amazing and it's going to be really cool to see Silent Hill 2 brought into the current day of 2023 and beyond, because then you're going to have a new audience looking at it. You're going to have different people who are going to be inspired by it, and you're going to have a new wave of gamers and developers and everything being inspired by something that created some of the most iconic pieces in gaming history. Because if we look at it, Silent Hill inspired games like The Evil Within, Outlast, so did Resident Evil. Resident Evil and I feel like Silent Hill both inspired those waves of games because let's be real, The Evil Within has a very Silent Hill and Resident Evil-esque type vibes. There are other remakes that have been made, but for the purposes of this discussion, I feel like Silent Hill and Resident Evil fit the mold perfectly. So now to flip the coin a little bit and to talk about a negative part of why remakes, on the other hand, shouldn't happen, or we should be very careful with, you know, how remakes are done, considering the fact that, yes, I think they are incredibly beneficial to the ecosystem of the gaming industry and how players view games in general. But there is one issue that we run into with it is the recreation of what the history of the game is. We've seen this with Resident Evil. We've seen this with older games that get remade. Sometimes they are just remade extraordinarily poorly, and they don't represent the game, the original game at least, in the same way that it should be. Like, we know that the remake for Dead Space, the first game, is going to be coming out on the 27th. I'm very curious to see if it holds up, because in the next batch of reviews that I have, I'm going to be reviewing Dead Space, the very first one. And I'm very nervous, to say the least, for how this game is going to come out, because everyone was so excited about the Callisto Protocol, and they thought, oh my god, it's the new Dead Space, it's the new this, it's the new that. Nothing like Dead Space. Everyone had their little gamer hearts broken for no reason, because they went in with expectations that did not match the outcome. And when you go in with high expectations for something, you are bound to be disappointed. That's just how it is. So like when everyone was, this is entirely off topic, but when you have high expectations for a game like Cyberpunk and it didn't deliver in the way that it was supposed to, yeah, you're gonna get miffed at it. That's neither here nor there. I just want to let everyone know that don't go into a remake with really high expectations because you loved the very first game. There's always going to be something very different, whether it's how the aliens look, or whether it's how the atmosphere is, or whether it's the blood writing on the walls. You never know, because remakes are exactly that. They are remaking the game. Now, this is something that I kind of have an issue with, because it has to do with the movies with Resident Evil, but it also has to do with how the games work too, where you have the game, let's say Resident Evil 3, that did an entirely awful job at remaking the game that it was supposed to include a lot of different things, and it just never did. Like the inclusion of Barry, like the inclusion of the many puzzles that were in the original game. When you are remaking a game, oh, and how should I phrase this? Remaking a game to make it entirely different than its predecessor, than what it originally was, I have a very big problem with. A remaster, on the other hand, is way different from a remake, because when you're remastering something, you are remastering some assets. You are remastering and cleaning up a lot of the controls and how the AI works and how different pieces of the game are brought together, whether that be things in the coding or whatever it may be. You guys get the point. But when you're remaking a game, that's something entirely different, of where you're taking everything and you are stripping it down and working on it from the ground up. I really hope that they do that with Silent Hill 2. They did that with The Last of Us 1, and that remake, oh my god, that was such a beautifully done remake, because not only did they do the surroundings a lot better, they remade a lot of the accessibility, they remade the photo mode, they remade so much stuff to include absolutely every kind of player that wants to be included in playing this game, and I really love that. The last thing I want to just touch on before I get going is with Silent Hill 2 and Dead Space remake, which is coming out, very, very soon. We have to really keep in mind not to get ahead of ourselves. I know I previously discussed this, of where we shouldn't get hyped for something without reason and without justification. Let's be hype about it, but also let's be realistic about it, because we don't want to get too excited for something and then have our feelings hurt or feel down about something. I don't know. I mean, like, for me personally, I get hyped about things regardless, but it's more or less the fact that it's coming out. That's what I get hyped about. And I feel like so many people get hyped about something and they get lost in this world of like, oh my god, I want to experience this again. I want to experience. That will never happen again. You are never going to experience those same feelings that you will as you did when you were a child. Just the way I will never experience Resident Evil 1 Remake the same way I experienced it when I was 10 years old. You are older now. You are hopefully wiser. You will experience things in a different way that will create a new set of memories. That way, when it gets remade again, you can reference back and think, oh yeah, I had a great time playing this, or, learning about this. So looking at this entire season of remakes, remasters, everything like that, I implore you guys to just be realistic about the remakes. Understand that while some of you might not like the fact that a lot of these games are being remade and that it's tainting the image of what the game once was, I really ask you guys to think that, okay, this is for the new generation of gamers that's coming out. This is for people who might not have gotten the chance to ever play Dead Space or Silent Hill 2, or even, I don't know, there are certain games that, you know, Last of Us, you know, that came out in 2013. A lot of gamers probably never got the chance to play it. I never got to play any of the God of War games until God of War 2018. You know, and I just recently got God of War 3, and so many people are like, you have to play 1 and 2, you have to. I can't find them anywhere. So unless they're being remade, or unless they're going to get an overhaul and, you know, get an emulation or something like that, I won't ever be able to play them. So, you know, it's not like I have a PS2 lying around anywhere. The first PS I got was PS4. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave your guys' comments down in the comment section below. I want to get a good conversation going about this. I really am excited to see what you guys have to say about your opinions on remakes, and if you guys like them, if you guys don't, if you're indifferent towards them. I really want to, you know, hear what your guys' thoughts are. But if you guys like my face and what I do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. I make videos every day here on YouTube. May you find your worth in the waking world, dear hunter. Stay casually nerdy, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye, you guys.